The crash and the command, the sky tore open with fire as the escape pod screamed through the clouds above the alien jungle. Its body glowing like a falling star, branches snapped like bones as it smashed through the canopy and hit the ground with a deep shudder that echoed across the wild land. Birds, scattered leaves spun in the air, and then silence fell. Heavy and complete smoke hissed from the pod door as it creaked open, and Jack stumbled out, blood running down his forehead, his uniform torn and soaked in sweat. He looked around, breathing hard. Trees towered above him, vines coiled like snakes, and everything moved like it was alive. The air was thick like soup, and the strange animal sounds made it clear he was far from home. He had crash-landed on a planet marked dangerous and uninhabitable in the human logs. A jungle world where scouts never returned, a world where the plants could kill and the beasts were faster than bullets. He barely had time to stand when he felt it. Eyes watching from the shadows, not animals but something else. Tall figures stepped out from behind the trees, their skin dark green like the leaves, their eyes glowing faint gold, their bodies wrapped in armor made from bone and bark. They didn't speak. They just circled him, silent, and cold spears pointed at his chest. Before he could speak, they struck him on the back of the head, and everything went black. When Jack woke again, he was inside a vast chamber, built into a living tree. Light filtered through moss-covered windows. The floor was soft with petals, and the walls pulsed faintly like veins in a body. He was on his knees, hands tied behind him, and in front of him stood a throne carved from root and stone. On that throne sat her, the jungle Queen. She was taller than any of the others, her body strong, her presence like thunder in the bones. Her crown was woven from living vines and glowing insects. Her eyes were sharp and deep like ancient rivers, and when she spoke her voice shook the air. You are human, she said, her words thick with accent, but clear enough. Your kind brings fire, your kind brings ruin. But you are here, and now you must obey. Jack stared at her, not sure if he was dreaming or dead, his throat dry, his legs shaking. She stood and stepped down from her throne, each step slow, each movement full of control. The guards moved aside, and she walked up to Jack, towering over him, her shadow falling across his chest. Our law is old, she said. Anyone who enters must choose become my mate or the jungle takes you. Words hit him like ice. Be her mate or die. There was no third choice. Jack looked up, defiant, even while trembling. I won't be owned. I didn't ask to come here, and I won't bow to anyone. A murmur rippled through the warriors around him, sharp gasps and hard stares. Even the queen tilted her head, slightly, eyes narrowing. Then, you will face the jungle, she said, and turned her back without another word. Guards lifted Jack to his feet and dragged him out of the chamber, down winding stairs and through hanging vines until they reached the jungle's edge again. They cut his hands free and threw a small blade at his feet. Nothing else, no food, no water, just the thick wall of green waiting to swallow him whole. Survive until moonrise, the guard said. If the jungle spares you, the queen may too. And then they were gone. Jack picked up the blade. It was dull and old, like a test, not a gift. He looked at the trees. They seemed to lean closer, breathing, watching, waiting to taste. In the air was heavy, the sun burning down. He stepped forward into the unknown. Within minutes he was scratched by thorns, bitten by insects, and nearly fell into a pit of roots that opened like a mouth. He kept going, wiping sweat from his eyes, listening to every snap of twig and rustle of leaf. A sound made him freeze, a low growl, something watching him from the trees. He backed away slowly and stumbled into a nest of glowing vines. They wrapped around his ankle and tried to pull him in. He slashed at them, panting, fighting to break free. The vines hissed like snakes and released him, but not before leaving burning marks across his leg. He limped forward, deeper into the jungle, no idea where he was going, but refusing to stop. He climbed a tree to get a better view, but the canopy was endless, green in every direction. He saw no way out, but he did see movement. A pair of golden eyes in the shadows, watching, not attacking, just watching. Jack didn't sleep that night. He built a crude shelter from leaves and branches, keeping the knife close. Every time he blinked, he felt the jungle shifting around him, breathing with him, hunting him. As the sun dipped low and the sky turned dark blue, the jungle began to sing with sounds he couldn't Neighing things, howling things, whispering, and from far off above the trees, drums began to beat deep and slow. A signal the Queen was watching and waiting, surviving the wild's night. In the jungle was alive, every leaf moved like it had eyes, every sound carried a warning. Jack crouched near the small shelter. He built his hands, gripping the dull blade tight. Sweat dripped from his brow, not just from heat but from fear too. He was used to machine circuits and wires, not hissing plants and glowing insects. That start with hungry light. The ground pulsed beneath him, as if something large crawled under the soil. He heard it shift, heard it breathe, then it passed by. And he could breathe again, but only for a moment. A loud snarl came from behind him, and Jack spun around, heart hammering. A large shadow leaped out from the trees. It was a predator, thick muscles, sharp fangs, eyes burning orange. It rushed at him, and he jumped sideways, barely avoiding its claws. The blade in his hand was nearly useless against something that size. He ran through the tree's branches, tearing at his skin roots. Grabbing his feet, the beast chased him, crashing through vines and leaves. Without slowing, he found a narrow path and slipped through, hoping it was too small. For the beast it wasn't. Came to a drop, a short cliff covered in moss, and without thinking he jumped, landing hard on his side. Pain shot through his ribs, but he rolled to his feet and kept going. Behind him, the beast roared again, and Jack knew he could not outrun it forever. He needed a plan. He remembered a trick from survival training. How to make a trap from vines and weight and slope. He scanned the jungle, found a bent tree thick enough, and began working fast, tying vines over a branch. Using bark to sharpen the end of a stick, he planted it into the ground, smeared it with sap to make it smell like blood, and then climbed a nearby rock to wait. Minutes passed. Then the beast appeared again, sniffing the air, growling. It moved toward the fake bait. Just as it stepped forward, the vine snapped. The branch flew down with force and slammed the beast into the ground. It screeched, thrashing in pain. Jack jumped down and drove his blade into its neck again and again until it stopped moving. He fell back, gasping, shaking, covered in sweat and blood. Not all of it his. Somewhere deep in the jungle, a drumbeat started again. This time louder, slower, and it made the ground vibrate. The Queen was watching. He stood breathing heavy, looking at the dead beast, and then up at the stars through the canopy, and laughed, not from joy, but disbelief. He had survived, and he knew the jungle would not stop here. As he walked back toward his shelter, he heard something soft, a whimper, low and weak. He followed the sound and found a small creature hiding under a bush. It looked like a baby version of the beast he just killed, but smaller, trembling with a hurt leg, its eyes wide with fear. Jack raised his blade, then paused. Something in those eyes stopped him. He saw fear, but also pain. He lowered the blade slowly and crouched beside the creature. It backed away, but could not run. Easy now, he whispered, not knowing if it could understand. He tore a strip from his shirt and wrapped the wounded leg, tied it firm but gentle, then backed away and sat nearby. He stayed awake all night, watching the jungle shift, watching the baby beast sleep, watching for eyes in the dark. By morning the creature was gone, but the leg bandage was still there. It had not attacked him, not run from him, just vanished like smoke. He stepped out from the shelter to find something waiting in the clearing. Mark on the ground made from stones, shaped like a spiral, glowing with faint blue light. He didn't know how it got there, but he knew what it meant. They were testing him. Jack moved forward, deeper into the jungle again, where the air was thicker, where the plants moved, even when there was no wind. He came across a tree with red fruit hanging low. His stomach growled and he reached for one, but just before touching it, he saw the leaves were covered in thin needles and pulled back in time. Every step was danger. Every branch could kill him. Every drop of water could be poison, but still he moved forward, learning the jungle's rhythm, listening to its voice. That night he found a cave near a waterfall and decided to rest there. Inside the cave, he saw carvings on the wall, drawings of warriors and beasts, and in the center a large figure with a crown of vines and a staff of bone. The Queen, long before him, maybe long before all of them, felt small, than just a dot in the long history of this place. But he also felt something else. Not fear, not any more respect when he stepped out of the cave-in, The morning he was surrounded again. This time the warriors had come back silent, as always, faces unreadable, weapons in hand. Stood straight, covered in mud scratches and bruises, but eyes sharp and proud. They took him without a word and led him through the jungle back to the great tree where the queen waited on her throne. She rose as he entered, her face calm but her eyes curious. "You did not die," she said, voice softer than before. "No," Jack replied, "I did not. You fed the jungle and still walk. It sees you," she said, stepping closer. Her hand reached out and touched the cut on his cheek, light as wind. "You still refuse?" she asked. Jack met her eyes and said, "I don't belong to anyone, but I'm still here." The queen looked at him for a long time, then turned to her guards. "Take him back," she said. "Tomorrow we test him again." Jack's heart sank, but he didn't flinch. He had survived once, and he would again. The jungle was not done with him, and neither was she. The jungle chooses Jack. Stepped through tangled vines into a dim clearing. The moonlight spilled across a carpet of moss. In the center of the circle of ancient trees stood the jungle queen. Her eyes shone like lanterns. She wore no armor tonight. Her shoulders were bare, the vine crown glowing softly above her dark hair. Around her, the silent warriors formed a ring. Jack's heart thudded. He faced them all, chest heaving from the trek through the night. His wounds throbbed, but he held his chin high. He had survived the first trial. Now he faced the most dangerous one yet. The queen spoke, her voice echoing under the leaves. "You have learned my jungle's ways," she said. "You have faced its beasts, yet you still refuse to bow." Jack met her gaze without fear. "I bow to no one," he said. "I stand as your equal." A hush fell. Even the night insects stilled. No human had ever spoken so freely before her. She tilted her head. "Then hear my final ultimatum," she said. She lifted her hand and the warriors lowered their weapons in unison. "Tomorrow at dawn, you stand before the heart tree. There you choose. Become my mate, bound by blood and vine, or face death by the jungle's edge." Jack swallowed. His mind spun. He had learned respect for this world, yet he could not promise fealty to her. Not like that. He had to find another way. "I will be there," he said. "But I choose my own path." The queen studied him silently. Then she turned away, stepping into the shadows. The warriors melted back into the jungle. Only Jack remained in the clearing, alone with his thoughts. He retreated toward the camp he had built near the waterfall cave. Mist rose from the water like ghosts. He washed his face under the falling stream and looked at his reflection in the pool. The cuts on his arms had begun to heal. He felt a spark of hope. The jungle had taken much, but it had given him strength too. As dawn approached, Jack made his way to the heart tree. It towered above everything else. Its trunk was as wide as a house. Vines hung from its branches like curtains. The air around it shimmered with ancient power. At its base lay a circle of smooth stones carved with symbols he did not understand. The jungle queen stood at the circle's edge beside her advisors. They wore masks of wood and bone. Their eyes were dark hollows that stared without blinking. Jack entered the circle and knelt on one knee. The queen remained silent, watching. One advisor spoke in a low, rough voice. "Human," he said, "you know the stakes. Accept her bond or accept oblivion." Jack rose to his feet. His legs shook. "I refuse," he said. "Not because I hate you or your people, but because true bond cannot be forced." A gasp rose from the watchers. The queen's crown vines fluttered. She took a step forward, her voice gentle. "Explain." Jack wiped sweat from his brow. "I have learned the jungle's heart. I have fought and survived. I have shown mercy where mercy was none. That is my bond with this world. The bond you seek demands my will be broken. That is no union. That is slavery." The queen studied him. The dawn light revealed her face in full. He saw regret and admiration in her eyes. "No outsider has ever dared speak so," she said softly. Suddenly, a roar shook the air. A dozen warriors burst from the undergrowth, weapons raised. Their leader, the strongest of the elders, shouted, "This ends now." He lunged at Jack with a jagged spear. The queen cried out and stepped between them. "Stop," she commanded. The attacker hesitated, eyes flicking from her to Jack, but hatred burned in his gaze. He charged again. Jack dove aside as the spear hissed past. He rolled and sprang up. With quick reflexes he kicked the warrior hard in the ribs. The man grunted and stumbled backward. Other rebels joined in. Chaos erupted at the edge of the circle. The queen drew a dagger carved from bone. She moved with lethal grace, deflecting swords and cutting vines with swift strikes. Jack picked up a fallen spear and faced his enemies. Though he had no training in ritual combat, fear sharpened his senses. He parried a slash and countered with a thrust. The rebel snarled and fell. Another came at him from the side. Jack ducked and used the warrior's momentum to send him crashing into a tree. Splinters exploded from the trunk. The queen fought beside him. They moved in strange harmony. She guarded his back. He protected her flank. The jungle seemed to hold its breath as they battled together. Finally, the rebels retreated one by one, wounded or wary. The clearing lay littered with broken weapons and fallen leaves. Jack panted, his shirt stained with sweat and blood. The queen knelt beside her wounded guard and helped him to his feet. Then she turned to Jack. "You saved me," she said. "And you saved us both." He lowered the spear. "I fought for my life," he replied. "But I could not stand by while you fell." The jungle wind stirred the vines. A gentle breeze carried whispers of approval. The elder leader limped forward, dropping his broken blade. He bowed his head. One by one, the other rebels followed. Respect was given without words. The queen rose and took Jack's hand. "You have proven your worth," she said. "Not by pledging to me, but by standing for yourself and for me. In your eyes, I see the strength of my people." Jack felt warmth. In his chest, he squeezed her hand lightly. "I owe only honesty," he said. She nodded and smiled. The crown vines glowed brighter. The circle's carvings pulsed with blue light. The heart tree seemed to awaken. Its branches stretched up toward the sky. The queen guided Jack to place his hand on the trunk. He felt electricity surge through him. He glimpsed visions of past queens, of battles won and lost, of life flowing through roots. The jungle spoke. Through the tree, acknowledging him, the rituals of binding had changed. The queen spoke the ancient words but with new meaning. She did not force him. Instead, she offered him partnership. He accepted by choice, touching the tree in return. A shock of light burst from the stone circle. The carvings brightened and then dimmed. The heart tree sighed, its leaves trembling in silent applause. The warriors gathered around, chanting in a low hum. Jack and the queen stood side by side at the center. The elders approached and placed symbols of rulership at Jack's feet. A simple bracelet of woven vines and a pendant carved from bone. The queen smiled. "You belong here," she said, "not as my mate in chains, but as my partner in heart." Jack exhaled and returned the smile. The jungle around them thrummed with life. Morning sunlight pierced the canopy in beams of gold. Together they raised their joined hands high. The jungle roared its approval in a chorus of bird calls and wind through leaves. Blood and choice, the morning sun poured through the high windows of the throne chamber, casting golden light on Jack and the Jungle Queen as they sat side by side. On twin thrones carved from living wood, warriors bowed their heads in respect and elders murmured among themselves. Every face in the hall was fixed on the new ruler's Jack brushed a lock of hair from his forehead and glanced at the queen. Her eyes met his with quiet pride. He felt a warmth in his chest stronger than any fear he had known in the jungle. Together they had faced trial and rebellion. Now they were bound by choice, and by the ancient Wu blood oath, you under the heart tree. Today, the Queen announced in a clear voice, we begin a new era. One of unity, strength, and honor. She raised her hand, and the warriors raised their spears in salute. Jack rose too, lifting his own hand. The hall echoed with the chant of the people as hope and excitement filled the air. Outside the chamber, the jungle had already reacted. Birds of bright plumage circled overhead, and the leaves of every tree seemed to lean toward the palace in greeting. Traders from distant tribes came bearing gifts of fruit and woven cloth. Even the harshest elders bowed to the Queen's decree. For a time, peace reigned. Jack and the Queen walked through the palace gardens, where flowers bloomed in impossible colors. They spoke little, content simply to be together. Jack touched the glowing vines at the base of a fountain. I never thought I would know this kind of calm, he said softly. She smiled, her vine crown shifting like living jewels. You have given our people new hope, she replied. You have shown that heart can conquer fear. Their calm did. Not last, a messenger arrived breathless, bearing dire news. A coalition of warrior tribes from the jungle's far edge had rallied against the Queen's rule. They claimed she had betrayed ancient law by accepting a human partner. Their armies moved through the forest, leaving burned villages in their wake. The Queen's face darkened. They call me weak, she said. They say I have broken the eternal law. She turned to Jack. We must stop them before they destroy all we have built. Jack nodded. He felt a surge of determination. Let me ride with your army, he said. Let me stand at your side. She studied him. The court had never before allowed a mate to join battle as a warrior. But she saw the fire in his eyes, the same fire that had defeated beasts and rebels. She gave a single nod. So be it. Within hours, the Queen's Guard and Jack marched toward the rebel army's advance. The jungle path narrowed as they approached a river crossing. There, they found hundreds of enemy warriors waiting behind sharpened stakes and burning torches. The air was thick with smoke and hatred. The rebel leader stood on a fallen log above his men. He wore a mask carved to resemble a snarling beast. Queen, he called out, voice booming, you have betrayed our world. You stand with a foreigner. Today we end your reign and drive him back to the stars. The Queen rode forward on her mount, a large feline creature with sleek black fur and glowing eyes. Jack followed on foot, his blade at the ready. We stand together, she shouted. We fight for our home, for our future. The rebel leader laughed. Then let the jungle decide who is worthy. With a roar, he signaled his warriors to charge. Spear met sword in a clash that shook the riverbank. Jack fought fiercely, deflecting blows and saving wounded warriors. The Queen moved like water and storm, cutting through lines and rallying her people. Their combined strength surprised every soldier who saw them fight, you side by side. You, amid the battle, Jack spied the rebel leader sneaking toward the Queen's flank. He sprinted across the churned earth, cutting down two attackers and tackling the leader before he could strike. Jack's blade pressed at the man's throat. The rebel froze, eyes widening in shock. At that moment, a spear flew from the darkness. It struck Jack in the shoulder, spinning him around and sending him to his knees. Pain exploded through his arm and chest. He fell forward, the blade slipping from his grasp. The rebel leader laughed and fled into the jungle. Jack lay gasping, blood soaking his shirt. The Queen saw him fall and roared in rage. She leapt from her mount, scattering guards to clear a path. With lightning speed, she reached Jack's side. Jack! She cried, lifting him into her arms. His vision blurred as she carried him away from the battlefield. Warriors parted before her, leaving a clear path to the river's edge. She reached the water and set him gently on the sand. The battle noise faded as she knelt and pressed her hands over his wound. Tears mixed with rain from the sky as she fought to staunch the bleeding. Hold on, She pleaded. "Stay with me." Jack's eyes opened a fraction. He saw her face, twisted with fear and love. "I'm not done," he whispered. Then his eyes closed and his breathing slowed. The Queen's heart shattered. She stood abruptly and screamed, a sound that shook the jungle itself. The river's water trembled, rocks skidding in the current. The warriors, hearing her cry, fell silent and watched in awe. She raised her arms to the sky and spoke in the old tongue, words that had not been spoken in generations. "If you take him from me, take me too. If you defend him, defend me." The jungle answered, the sky darkened, thunder rolling like drums. Vines slithered from the trees and wrapped around the enemy soldiers, pulling them off their feet. The river swelled, washing away stakes and weapons. The rebel army scattered, screaming as the jungle turned against them. The Queen's warriors watched in silent gratitude. They had never seen the Queen call on the jungle's power so fiercely. When the chaos faded, Jack lay unconscious but alive. The jungle vines receded, and the river calmed. Only the Queen remained at his side. Guarding him with her life. An elder approached and bowed deeply. "You have shown us what true rule means," he said. "By saving him, you have chosen love. Over law, our loyalty is yours." The Queen wiped tears from her cheeks and smiled sadly at Jack. "He will live," she promised, "and I will protect him." As the sun broke through the clouds, her warriors cheered and rallied around her. The rebel threat had been crushed not by force alone, but by the bond between a human and a queen. Yet in the Queen's heart, a new choice loomed: to vow loyalty to her world or to the man who had risked everything for her. The dawn of the new era had come with blood and sacrifice. Now the true test of their bond awaited. The jungle boughs morning. Light filtered through the dense canopy and fell on the clearing where Jack lay on a bed of soft moss. The Jungle Queen knelt beside him, gently, brushing leaves from his hair. His breathing was steady now, and the wound on his shoulder had closed, leaving only a faint scar. Around them the warriors gathered in silent respect, their spears lowered and heads bowed. The rebel threat was gone, and the jungle itself had spoken. Jack opened his eyes and met the Queen's gaze. He eased himself to sit up, and she offered a steadying hand. He took it and rose slowly. Every movement felt new and precious after the night's blood and chaos. He looked at the faces of the warriors who had once hunted him. Now they stood as his allies. He felt a swell of pride and humility at the same time. The Queen rose too and addressed the gathered crowd with a clear voice that carried across the clearing. "Today we honor the bond between our world and the human who walked our trials." She raised her hand and vines unfurled from the heart tree's roots, forming a living arch above them. "Let this day be marked in our history as the day when the jungle chose unity over fear." A hush fell as the jungle itself seemed to join in the ceremony. Birds sang from the branches and a soft wind rustled through leaves. The warriors stepped forward one by one and placed simple gifts at Jack's feet: woven bracelets of vine, carved tokens of bone, and colorful feathers. Jack accepted them with a bow of gratitude. Later, Jack and the Queen walked together to the edge of the restored river. The water ran clear and cool, reflecting the emerald green of the trees. In his hand, Jack held a small sapling, a gift from the Queen to symbolize new life and new beginnings. He knelt and planted it in the soft earth by the riverbank. The Queen knelt beside him and pressed her hand to the soil. Together they whispered words of blessing. The sapling's leaves glowed faintly in response to their touch. As the day warmed, the palace gardens filled with laughter and song. Children ran beneath the trees, chasing butterflies with wings of light. Traders set up stalls with bright fruit and exotic spices. Jack watched as the people he once feared now welcomed him with open arms. He marveled at how quickly fear had turned to celebration. That evening the Queen led Jack to the highest balcony of the living palace. From there they could see the jungle stretching to the horizon, Fireflies rose in spirals and stars began to appear in the sky. The air was cool and fragrant with blooming flowers. Jack leaned on the wooden railing and felt the rhythm of this world in his chest. "You saved my life," the queen said softly, her vine crown glowing like a halo in the twilight. "And you saved our people from their own doubt." She placed a gentle hand on his arm. "I owe you everything." Jack turned to her and offered a shy smile. "You gave me a chance to prove my worth," he replied. "You showed me a home I never knew I could have." He paused and looked into her eyes. "I choose this world. I choose you." She smiled and leaned forward to rest her forehead against his. In that moment, words were not needed. Their bond had been forged in fire and blood, and now it stood strong in peace. The next day, under the shade of the heart tree, the elders declared Jack the first human king of the jungle realm. The queen placed a new crown of living vines on his head and wrapped his shoulders with a cloak of bright feathers. Jack stood tall and accepted the honor. The warriors cheered and the jungle echoed their cries. Weeks passed in a blur of rebuilding and renewal. Jack worked with the queen to improve life for all. They taught the people new ways to grow food, to protect the vulnerable, and to explore beyond the known paths. Jack introduced simple machines powered by water and wind. The warriors learned to craft stronger armor and to harvest the jungle's gifts without harm. Through it all, Jack and the queen remained partners in every sense. They shared early mornings planning for the realm's future and late nights talking by the fire about hopes and dreams. Jack learned the old language of the jungle and the queen, learned about the stars and stories from his home world. One day, they stood together on a high cliff overlooking the vast green sea below. The sun set in a blaze of orange and purple. Jack wrapped an arm around the queen's waist, and she leaned into him. Below them, the jungle glowed with life. He whispered, "We have come far." She looked up at him and nodded. "And we will go farther," she said, "together." Jack pressed a kiss to her vine crown and smiled. The danger and pain of the past felt like a distant dream. What remained was their bond, tested by the fiercest trials and stronger for every battle. As night fell, they walked back toward the palace hand in hand. The path was lit by glowing fungi planted along the way, a gift from the queen's court to Jack. Children waved at him and called out his name. Jack waved back, his heart full of gratitude. They reached the great doors, and the queen slipped her hand into his. No words were needed. Together they stepped inside, ready to face whatever the future might bring. And so the jungle realm entered a new age. Under their joint rule, fear gave way to trust, and old laws were reborn with fresh meaning. The heart tree stood sentinel at the realm's center, its roots binding land and people as closely as Jack and the queen were bound by choice and by love. Their story became legend, told around fires and sung by bards, a tale of courage, compassion, and the power of unity. And long after Jack's scars had healed and the queen's crown vines had grown long and strong, the jungle whispered their names on the wind, a reminder that sometimes the greatest bond is the one chosen freely from the heart. The end.